I'm so glad this spring is finally here and that warmer weather is coming our way. The only downside to this, of course, is now you have to keep up with your lawn. I usually have to mow my grass once a week because it rains all the time. We do pay a guy to come out and mow our grass every other week. That gets really expensive, and then I usually go about a week with my grass being overgrown. When Sunseeker reached out to me to cover the Orion X7, of course I was super pumped because, hey, I can save some money and test out this awesome robotic lawnmower. I've never really been interested in robotic lawnmowers in the past because they're usually a pain to set up. You usually have to bury a wire for the perimeter of your yard or at least stake one in place. The Orion X7 is super easy to install and is wire free. Instead of using a boundary wire, the Orion X7 uses a positioning and navigation system as well as the artificial vision and deep learning system. With the included all-wheel drive driving system, this is going to be able to tackle rugged terrain and slopes. I'm very excited to test this out and see how well it does in my yard. Big shout out to Sunseeker for sponsoring this video. Let's go ahead and get started. So as I mentioned earlier, the setup process on this was relatively painless. It only took me about 15 to 20 minutes to be able to start mapping out my yard and start mowing it. I started out by finding a level spot for the charging station. The charging station does need 5 foot of clearance. It does have an extended power cord, so it can be a little further away from your charge port, so you should be able to find somewhere to put this pretty easily. Next up, I installed the RTK station. It's very important that this is installed vertically without any slant. You can install this right there on the back of the charge station if the charge station is in a very clear and open space. In my case, I actually tried installing this right next to the charge station and realized that my house was too tall to achieve the 100-degree angle that this needs for reception from the satellites for proper positioning. So I did move it out about 5 feet away from my charge station. I was very easily able to bury the wire from the RTK station to the charge station using a shovel, and it took about 5 minutes of my time. I buried it about 3 inches just so it's not a tripping hazard. I did the same thing with the power line going from the charge station to my wall, and once again it only took about 5 minutes to get that little bit of wire buried, and that was all the burying I needed to do. I didn't have to worry about setting up a boundary wire, which is definitely a major plus here. You can also install the RTK station on the wall of your home, just as long as you have that 100 degrees line of sight for the satellite connection. From here, I needed to pair the lawnmower to Wi-Fi. This may ask you for a password for the lawnmower. By default, that's 4 zeros, and that's just what I kept mine. You can also opt here to change the password, and the application walks you through that process. Once the lawnmower was connected to Wi-Fi, it was time to pair the RTK station. Once again, the application kind of walks you through that process. When everything was connected, I had 3 solid lights on the RTK station with the power light blinking just to indicate that I have power there. And my mower was charging on the charge base, so that light was blinking as well. Next up was the fun part. This is where you get to create the virtual boundary in your yard. For this, you'll go into the map settings and create a working zone. I should mention here that this application will be updated when this launches, so the application may look different for what I'm showing you here, but these are the basic steps. You'll actually walk behind the motor and remote control it through the application to outline the barrier of where you want that work zone to be. I also have a strip of grass in front of the sidewalk, so I made a second work zone and then a third work zone on the other side of my driveway. I then went back into the application and set up a couple of corridors. The corridors allow the lawnmower to go from one work zone to the next, and in my situation, I need to be able to cross over the sidewalk and the driveway. So I made 2 corridors connecting all 3 work zones. You also have options to make virtual walls and no-go zones. So if you have a very complicated yard or a garden with lots of obstacles, you can actually program those obstacles into your map. That way the mower doesn't go near those obstacles. After mapping out my yard, I went on ahead and let this do its first mow. To be honest, I was pretty skeptical at first as to whether or not this would be able to maintain signal with the base in the RTK station and be able to stay within the boundaries that I had set, and if this would even be able to perform an efficient mow. That being said, I was super surprised at just how well this maintained its position. At any time I could check on its position, it told me exactly where the mower was. It did not lose reception to the RTK station and the charging base, and very seamlessly and effortlessly mowed my entire yard without missing spots. If it did somehow miss a spot, it always seemed to go back and catch that spot that it had missed. It went all the way up to the edge of the boundary that I had set within centimeters. This uses the always-on navigation system, which is a fusion of RTK GNSS satellite positioning and a VSLAM visual technology to deliver a very precise and accurate cut. The RTK GNSS system communicates with satellites to give the lawnmower its precise location so that it always knows exactly where in your yard or garden it is at all times. This also uses a binocular VSLAM system so it can actually see obstacles that are in its path. If you have a very intricate garden, this is able to avoid all the obstacles and totally go around them. Now, I did test out the obstacle avoidance. I stood directly in front of it and it was able to avoid me without touching me at all, which is definitely a benefit here. It's something that is rather important to me because I've got dogs, I have children, and I need this to be able to avoid obstacles for safety. But also if you just have lots of bushes or trees, this is going to avoid those obstacles. The Orion X7 also gets smarter as it mows with its deep learning system. It's able to consistently enhance its comprehension of gardens and landscapes through continuous data accumulation. This means not only is it able to avoid the obstacles that are out in your yard and in your garden, and do that consistently, but it also helps when you're manually mapping to scope out and map out those obstacles. So if you're mapping next to a wall or next to a bush, it's able to make note of that. So later when it goes out to mow those areas, it's able to maintain a little bit of distance to avoid damaging those obstacles. My yard is not entirely level and it's not entirely smooth. The entire yard is at a very minor slope, not a major slope, but I was worried about how this would perform with the different bumps and valleys and dips in my yard, and would it get caught or stuck, or would it skin the grass? With the all-wheel drive system, this is able to navigate slopes up to a 70% incline, which is pretty big. It didn't have any issues on any of the surfaces in my yard. This was able to automatically adjust as it mowed thanks to the dual floating cutting blade disc. The cutting discs are able to contour to your yard, so if there are rough spots or dips, this is able to kind of contour and keep a level cut on your grass. You will notice that the Orion X7 uses these smaller razor blades to cut the grass, and you're probably wondering, does that actually work? Because if you've seen a traditional lawnmower, the blade is pretty hefty. You might think that these little razor blades are just not going to work to cut the grass, but I was very surprised at how well this actually worked. Even when this was cutting in more dense grass, it didn't have any issues. It didn't bog down or anything like that. It was able to just kind of breeze right through those areas. You do have a bit of customization here. You can customize the height of the cut from 0.8 inches all the way up to 4 inches. I've got mine set right in the middle at about 2 inches. You also have some other customization settings within the app, like the cutting speed and the cutting direction. There are 3 different directions here. You've got standard, traceless, and custom. So depending on how you want the outline or the pattern to look, you can customize that within the application. You also have the ability to choose the cutting efficiency. There is an option for the rain delay, so this can sense if it's raining, and when it's raining, it will return back to the base station, and then you can choose the rain delay as far as when you want this to go back to working on the grass. You can even customize the efficiency, direction, and rotation speed on a per zone basis. The application also gives notifications for when this is low on battery and needs to be recharged. When it does deplete, it will return to the base station. As far as the battery life, this had plenty of juice to cut my entire front yard in one charge. I still have 25% left. It does take 2 to 3 hours to fully charge the battery once it returns to the charge station, but I could easily set this out to mow the front yard and then let it recharge, and then it would have enough juice to mow the backyard. So within 2 different cycles, I could get my entire yard mowed. And with the built-in GPS and 4G, you get a precise location. So this acts as auto theft or theft prevention. If somebody does take your mower, you're going to be able to track it down. Overall, I have to say the Orion X7 is the perfect springtime companion. This is going to provide you with seamless cuts, super easy to set up, very powerful and efficient at mowing your grass. Grass is up to 4 inches tall with industry-leading mapping and navigation utilizing the RTK GNSS and VSLAM system. It's going to be hard to find a more thorough and efficient lawn mowing system that's this easy to set up at this price point. I'll be sure to include a link in the description of where you can find out more information on the Sunseeker Orion X7. Sunseeker currently has an early bird special that you could save $300 on your order of the Orion X7. So be sure that you do hit up that link and check out that offer. That about wraps it up for this video. Thanks guys for watching. Be blessed. I'll see you in the next one.